Well, good morning once again. My name is Marcin Zaborowski. I represent here the Polish Institute for International Affairs, which is a key partner of this event. And I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Mayor Dudkiewicz, Mr. Witucki, and the Atlantic Council for organizing this excellent event, which was set up 3 years ago and has taken up since as the major transatlantic event in Poland of the year. And of course, none of that would have happened without Andrzej Bobiński of Orange, who transformed this event from the very beginning and made it what it is today. So big cheers for Andrzej on the nearest possible occasion. Not sure whether he is with us this morning, but hopefully he's not running around and trying to pull it all together. Now, turning to our panel, we meant to discuss here the future of Europe. A minor topic, one might say, but still a very pressing matter. The first thing that strikes me when thinking about the issue of the panel today is that a year ago, or certainly 2 years ago, we probably wouldn't be talking about it. It's not like that the situation is so much less serious a year ago, but the sense of where we are with Europe was different. We were still seeing Europe as a, well, perhaps not an awful exciting and rather remote enterprise, but however safe, and we would have assumed that the European Union would continue indefinitely. Today, we approach the topic with a greater sense of concern, if not alarm, really. The Eurozone crisis is unfolding, and within the matter of months, we will be faced with the answer whether the Eurozone will actually remain intact. The Greek election may produce the parties which will reject the restructuring deal, and we are really teetering here on unknown. The costs of borrowing in Spain are reaching the unsustainable level, and we might be in a position when Spain will be asking for a bailout, for a bailout within a matter of few weeks. The enlargement process is stalled, and the European neighborhood policy is under review, which is certainly a very positive development. But as we heard from our Ukrainian friends yesterday and before, the current policy does not always meet their expectations. And overall, at the times like that, the EU tends to look more inwards than outwards. So the times are difficult, one might say, but at the same time, these are perhaps good times for outstanding individuals with a foresight perspective. The people who, like that, are listened at the time with more attention. The people who can think outside of box. And we are extremely fortunate to have people like that, individuals like that with us on this panel. And we'll very briefly introduce them, starting with the Commissioner for EU Enlargement and European Neighbourhood Policy, Štefan Füle. We have with us Ana Palacio, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Spain. Quentin Peel of Financial Times. And Elmar Brok of the European Parliament. As we agreed, I will ask now the Commissioner Füle to take the floor and to deliver his keynote. And later on, I will address the panel with 2 or 3 lead questions, and we open up to broader discussion. Mr. Füle, the floor is yours.
Very good morning. It's interesting, Elmar, whenever they say your name, there is no need to add a chairman of AFET of the European Parliament because it is so closely associated with your name. Ladies and gentlemen and dear friends, it is a great pleasure for me to be here with you this morning and to talk about the European Union and its neighborhood in a changing world. In today's world, I can see 3 major drivers of change. First, the emergence of new powers and the consequent power shift at the global level. Second, demographic trends inside and outside of the European Union, and it is not a reassuring comparison, you would agree with me. And third, increased globalization. What do these changes mean and how do they impact our policy towards the neighborhood? First, the emergence of so-called BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and the Asia-Pacific region means that Europe and the North Atlantic are no longer the only dominant players on the world stage. Size matters. And I would add, size matters again. What a wake-up at the beginning of the 21st century after living in illusion for the last 2 centuries. The emergence of the Asia-Pacific region has led the United States to readjust its foreign policy strategy and to embark on so-called pivot to Asia. It has left the European Union with ever-increasing responsibilities in its own neighborhood. It has to do more to promote universal values and stability, and it has to use its resources more effectively. Second, the demographic trends. The demographics have a particularly stark impact in the broader European Union region. The European Union now has roughly 500 million inhabitants, but we are having fewer children and are getting older. By contrast, our neighbors in North Africa and the Middle East have booming populations. In 20 years' time, we will have 2 billion neighbors, and they will be much younger. We will have more and more retired people supported by fewer and fewer workers. And third, increased globalization. The challenges of globalization do not stop at our borders, and neither do the unprecedented opportunities. We are part of the issues at stake. Therefore, we will have to shape the issues, or they will shape us. We know that all these drivers of change are cyclical, and maybe in 100 years' time, things could be totally different. However, this is the first time that we face a so-called perfect storm of all these elements or drivers of change interacting at the same time. This means that we must face up to competition. Well, what kind of competition I'm talking about? I'm talking about the competition of the values. When we are competing with other magnetic powers. We are not the only one anymore. There is a huge competition starting just behind our borders. This competition does not start in China or elsewhere on the Asian continent. It starts right here on our doorsteps. You can stop a person from crossing the European Union or Schengen border, but you can stop the globalization. It has a visa-free status. Most of the difficulties and challenges we are facing are often presented as a side effect of integration that is not thorough enough. Globalization is actually testing it. Testing if our integration model is up to the task, is testing us, is testing our banks, is testing our internal market, it's testing our environment. Nevertheless, our current difficulties should not be seen as a sign of failure of our integration project. And I'm saying that despite the euro having offered to many a sweet pillow of living at the expense of our children. If we can deliver on the full potential of this integration project, we will be much more effective in addressing the globalization. And that brings me to our enlargement policy. And don't worry, this is not the only sharp curve in my morning's address. And the case I'm going to make is that our neighborhood is not only a part of this process, but it's actually a part of the solution. Enlargement offers much more than simple alignment with the European Union acquis. It leads to deeper reforms, but also poses greater demands on our partners. Enlargement requires credibility on our side and credibility on the candidate sides to deliver on the reforms. They enter only when fully prepared. They do their homework, they move forward. We deliver, they join. That is why it is our most successful external policy. The progress that we have recently made with our enlargement policy there for all to see. Croatia will become a member state of the European Union on 1st July 2013. Its economy is ready to form a part of the internal market. Democratic principles and fundamental rights are respected and the rule of law has been strengthened, though it still has one more year to deliver fully on its commitment. Serbia has been granted candidate status, and Montenegro is sustaining its course towards European Union membership, and other countries are making visible progress. Let me turn to our policy towards our neighbors. It is based on two pillars. First, a commitment to support the process of political reform and democratization based on our common values of democracy, rule of law, and human rights. And second, convergence with the European Union rules and our mutual interest in cooperation, stability, and ensuring peace. These are elements for which we are all well equipped. We have the instruments to shape the prosperity and security of our neighborhood, and thus also our own. Last year, the European Union launched a renewed European neighborhood policy aimed at providing greater support to partners engaged in building deep and sustainable democracies, supporting inclusive economic development more effectively, and strengthening the two regional dimensions of the European neighborhood policy, namely the Eastern Partnership and the South dimension, or if you like it, Union for Mediterranean. The renewed policy is based on the more for more approach, more support from the European Union in return for more progress towards democratic reform. The Arab Spring made it even clearer that there can be no sustainable political and economic stability without a political pluralism, dignity, and accountability. We have redoubled our efforts to encourage civil society in our entire neighborhood and put them much closer to the center of our efforts. Our approach to funding is also innovative. We have established a so-called Spring program in the south and EPIC program in the east, which are providing additional financial support of up to 1 billion euros to the best performing partners. For the first time, we don't have just a rigid instrument where it takes 2 years between the policy decision and the first resources arriving to the partners in needs. We have a multi-annual and multi-country program where we're working with weeks or months, but not years, and where we are much more flexible in shifting our focus. Between 2007 and 2013, the European budget will have provided over 12 billion euros in grant funding to the South Mediterranean and Eastern Europe. And this does not include the top-up funding I have just mentioned. A comparable amount of credits will have also been extended by the European Investment Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. In a nutshell, we have demonstrated the credibility of our neighborhood policy by being proactive by interacting better and by delivering on our commitments. But facing the three drivers for change I described at the beginning, the question is not whether we have all relevant instruments to steer processes in our neighborhood. The question is whether we have ability and will to use these instruments to their full potential and in a proactive manner. Allow me therefore reflect about the future. I have already outlined that we are doing with our enlargement and what we are doing with our enlargement and neighborhood policies, but the question is it enough? In my view, we can and should be doing more to improve our structures and the way we pursue our policies so that we use our external elements to our advantage. Europe does not only need firemen, and there are indeed many fires around. It needs strategists so that it can deal with the impacts of competition I refer to and globalization. That is why I believe that the time has come for us to collectively increase the pace of delivery so that our neighborhood policy can be more effective and becomes finally a part of the solution. We need to use all our instruments. Currently, we are not making the optimum use of them. We are too cautious. It's not a mystery that the most powerful foreign policy instrument of the European Union, the expression of its ultimate transformative power, is the perspective for a country to exceed. According to Article 49 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, every European country that respects the principles upon which the European Union is founded may apply to join the Union. Our Eastern partners are European countries. Today there is no agreement within the European Union on the accession perspective of our Eastern European partners. However, no one has put any limit on the depth and scope of integration they can achieve. I'm convinced that we should send positive signals to our Eastern partners. We should encourage them to advance as far and as fast as possible on the path towards the closest possible political association and economic integration with the European Union. We should be creative as far as regulatory framework. We should be creative as far as the extent of approximations is concerned. But we should be firm on our partners delivering on values and principles, as any compromise there would ultimately weaken our union. As for our southern partners, after the Arab Spring, we looked at our interests and our values together as genuine partners, trying to be more effective. We are not telling our partners what to do, but trying to rise to their needs and ambitions. Here's hints: more for more support for more reform. As I envisage it, the end game for our southern partners is a common economic space together with the European Union, which means that the southern Mediterranean could gradually become part of the European Union's internal market for goods and services. Their booming populations and fast-growing economies would help boost the economy of the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, despite the current crisis, the European Union today is an attractive model of democracy, prosperity, and stability to many neighbors. Nevertheless, it will have to find new, bold, and flexible ways to become even stronger and to accommodate and anchor itself to those neighbors that also want to share in its democracy, prosperity, and stability without compromising the unity and diversity of the European Union. If we look towards the broader context, it is clear that we will have to find a new and a more flexible setup. In making the European Union more adaptive to change, a reference to a multi-speed Europe should not be a taboo. It should have the agility to respond to challenges of globalization while avoiding any kind of discrimination. And just this week in the European Commission, we were talking about the roadmap and timetable to the economic and fiscal union. And I made the case very strongly that as we move on that road, we should in parallel and in a compatible way also move on with our enlargement and neighborhood policies. The European Union is in a process of political and economic transformation to face the consequences of the economic and financial crisis. I'm convinced that it will come out strengthened. We need to change in such a way that the people's confidence in the ability of the unions to be an outward-oriented geopolitical force is fully restored. Open up the European Union. Make it even more inclusive. Don't look for contradictions there. There is none. Thank you.